Okay, we're going to look at the do while loop in this example, and I'll talk briefly about the while loop. These things both work very similarly. They're used for iterations of a loop that you don't really know how many times it's going to run. The user might want to do it over and over and over again until they choose to quit. Or in your lab, you have to run the program over and over and over again until either they quit or they get the answer to the game right. And so the difference between the do while loop and the while loop really has to do with whether you check the loop control at the beginning of the loop or at the end of the loop. And this reason this is important from a logical standpoint is if you need the loop to run at least once, then you're going to have the loop execute once and then check to see if your conditions are still true and if the loop will continue on or drop out. If you check it at the beginning with the while loop, if the user never enters the right data or nothing actually matches that, then it's possible that your loop would never ever execute because it couldn't make it into the loop by passing that condition. So what we're going to do, and what I encourage you to do in your lab, is to let the loop run at least once, check your conditions, and then determine if it's going to loop again. So I'm going to have pretty much a nonsensical loop example here. I'm going to write a loop that uses multiple conditions, so two things have to be true for the loop to continue. You'll need to know how to do that for your lab. And it's going to go into the loop at least once, and will only drop out of the loop if they choose a negative number or they choose to not keep going. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a setup here with our regular script tags. I'm going to set up two variables. I'm going to set up the number, and this is the number that they're going to enter that needs to be positive to keep the loop going. And then I'm going to ask them if they actually want to keep going. This is the do you want to quit option. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and I'm going to type the do command, and then I'm going to surround the code that is going to execute during the loop with curly braces. So what I'm going to do in this case, the code I'm going to do is keep prompting them for numbers and asking them if they want to quit. So I've written this code out on another notepad, and I'm going to paste it in. So we're going to set the number equal to what they enter for their number, and we're also going to ask them, do you want this loop to keep going? And that'll be stored in that. So after the do part, what we do then is we come in with the while statement that says we'll do that code block that we just did while the following conditions are true. And so our while is going to be that the number is greater than 0 and keep going is equal to yes. Remember that when you have a comparison when you're checking to see if something is equal, you need to use a double equal sign. I write some notes on this. There's stuff in the book about this. If you use a single equal sign, what it does, it assigns that. So if I had one equal sign there, it would store yes in keep going. And if it could do that without a problem, then it would evaluate as a true statement here. And that's not what you're looking for. You're looking to see if they've actually typed in the value yes. So as long as my number is positive and I keep typing in yes, it will run this thing over and over and over and over again. The minute that one of these becomes not true, in other words, I enter a negative number, or I enter no, or basically anything else, since I'm using the equal sign, then it's going to drop out of the loop. So after it drops out of the loop, then you can come in with additional code. So document.write, loop over, you entered a negative number or you decided to quit. Now, in your lab, you have to take it one step further. You have to determine whether they got it right or if they decided to quit. So you'd probably have if-then statements there to determine why the loop stopped. This is a simple approach to giving feedback after the loop is over. So let's take a look at this. I'm going to save this as doLoop.html. And we're going to go on over to our thing. I had already saved it to test it earlier, so I'm just going to reload it, but you can do Control-O and open it. So I'm going to enter a positive number, and I'm going to tell it yes. Now I'd probably have to give some instructions to type out the word yes instead of Y, but I do that, and it comes back and it asks me to continue, and I can sit here and enter large positive numbers, and as long as I say yes, it runs. The minute I enter a negative number though, it's going to drop out because my loop was over. Either the number you entered was not positive or you decided to quit. And we want to test our other option too. I'm going to enter a positive number but tell it no, I don't want it to keep going, and it also decides to drop out. So that right there is the loop that you will do when you don't know how many times for sure it is going to loop. A lot of times there's some sort of flag that you manipulate through your code to tell it when to stop. Now, on these loops in particular, from a logical standpoint, you always need to make sure that that option is at some point going to get out of it, because you don't want to have an endless loop that the user can't break out of. So that's it for our chapter 3 videos. Next chapter we will be looking at functions. We'll talk about scope of functions, and we'll move on to some of the methods and the objects that are built in to JavaScript.